Hello! Ohayo gozaimasu. Irashaimase. Welcome to today's Naruse a Day review. Today we are focusing on a film that is quaint, engaging, very likeable, curiously enigmatic in some of its narrative strategies, and very short, less than 55 minutes. So really a short film rather than a feature-length film. One made just around the time that Japan was entering into World War II, but one in which the presence of war, the presence of any kind of national trauma or conflict seems very remote, very distant. This is Hideko the Bus Conductress, which features a character who is certainly a bus conductress, but who is not called Hideko. It does, however, feature an actress called Hideko, Takamine Hideko. Perhaps the actress most closely associated with Naruse, given her long-standing body of work with the director, which began in the 1930s and went right through to the 1960s. So we may want to think about this film as being called Hideko, the actress playing a bus conductress, which I don't say with complete sort of sly facetiousness. I think given some of this film's narrative strategies and its narrative focus, this idea of a kind of meta-cinematic almost imperative is one that we may want to bear in mind. The overall thrust of this story is of a struggling bus company operating, it seems, one bus, a rather bedraggled, dirty, antiquated bus. And in the face of competition from other more modern and larger concerns, there is an idea arising from Hideko herself, or the bus conductress herself, to begin not only providing a service that moves people from A to B to C, but also that provides them with information about the landscapes through which they travel. So she has a writer friend of hers write a script pointing out local places of interest, and with some largely comedic, light-hearted setbacks, she implements this strategy and becomes a bus guide or a tour guide as well as a conductress. There is in Hideko the Bus Conductress a strong sense of movement. Often in Naruse's films, movement is highly connotative, highly symbolic, as well as serving to ground his narratives in some of the rituals and routines of everyday life. There is a certain realistic imperative at play. Hideko the Bus Conductress, like the later film Lightning from the early 50s, which also stars Takamine Hideko, opens with a shot looking out from the front of a bus as it makes its way through the Japanese countryside, through rural locations. The crux of the film is the development, the sort of ascension to some kind of confidence and social subjectivity of the bus conductress. She learns to overcome reticence and shyness, to become someone whose voice literally is heard, and through whom both information and personality are conveyed. There is a sort of slyly, I think, satirical or parodic subterfuge here where the writer who writes the script for Hideko to read on the bus kind of is quite almost overwhelming in the way that he grooms her, in the way that he writes her, demands that his words be adhered to almost to the letter, and indeed coaches her on her performance, sort of brings her along as a performer, as someone with a voice and a presence that that commands attention, that engages an audience, and that effectively communicates. Now, I mentioned a cinematic imperative to the film, and the fact that the film is named after its lead actress suggests this, but this sense of the performance of this character, the sense of her developing as a person through developing as a performer, is writ large, and she kind of develops beyond what the mentor, the writer, is able to offer, and her and the male driver of the bus are able to, in essence, save the company from the mismanagement of the kind of bumblingly ineffectual and greedy and selfish company owner or company president. Although we see very brief glimpses of Hideko's home, her mother, there is, unusually for Naruse, certainly for Naruse's major films, there is no real grounding of this character within either the family with whom she lives or the village or social environment in which she lives. This is almost a kind of existential drama, although the tone throughout is fairly light, fairly perky. There is this sense of almost existential development to the character, where she has to rely on herself in order to progress. Ultimately, there are almost throwaway moments that are quite strange, in that things that are quite dramatic take place, that particularly pertain to a sort of quasi-feminist angle, but which are treated quite offhandedly or quite lightly by the director. So it's a curious film, but a very rewarding one in a lot of ways. I think it's one that sort of bridges the gap, if you like, between major works in the 30s and major works in the 50s. So to that extent, at least, it's a key Naruse film. I certainly highly recommend this one. It doesn't take up too much of your time. It's superbly paced and very well played. Takamine was clearly a star in the making, despite only being 17 and only having appeared in one or two films prior to this. And it certainly shows where she was heading and points the way to the great career she would have in the 50s and 60s. So do give it a try. Like, comment, subscribe, or don't like, comment, or subscribe, whatever. Follow me on X at AdamBingham01 for more of my ramblings, largely about cinema, but not exclusively. And stay tuned for more videos and more Naruse reviews in the very near future.